Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. The session today is Let's Talk Language in Infant and Toddler Classrooms. We welcome you today to the session, which is going to focus on language with infant and toddlers. We are Natasha Reese and Anna Avalos Atkinson. We work as coaches for the Early Learning Coalition of Broward County. Today's session is the third and last in the series of infant and toddler trainings. We're very happy that you are joining us today. We hope that the information we share is useful to you and that you'll have new ideas and strategies to take back with you to help you further enhance the language development of the children in your care. Before we start today's session, we just want to go over some webinar housekeeping tips. On the right side of your screen or on the left, you'll see a small arrow that will open and close the panel, the webinar panel. You'll also see a little questions triangle shown below. Any questions or comments that you might have throughout the training, you can just type in there. You will also see a section with handouts where you will find your certificate and some handouts that we feel will be useful to go along with today's training. Also in the handouts, there's information about the stipends, instructions on how to fill out those documents, W-9 and vendor ACH form. Today's icebreaker activity poll will get this session started. So we're going to ask you to answer the poll question, which is, how many years have you worked in the early childhood field? Just to kind of get an idea of where we're at. When we do face-to-face trainings, we kind of, want to network and kind of get to know our participants, and it's a nice way to bond together and to acknowledge everyone's efforts and collaboration in these trainings. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. And we'll ask you to just answer the question. Okay, so the poll is in progress. The poll is in progress now. Please answer the question of how many years have you worked in the early childhood field? All right, great. So we see a lot of participants have responded already. And we see a lot of participants have, over 50% of the participants have been in the field 5 to 10 years. The answers were less than 1 year, 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and 10 years or more. All righty, just one more minute. And we're going to close the poll. Great, thank you so much for participating today in the poll question. And we have the winner being 5 to 10 years. 50%, 5 to 10 years, okay? 50% of participants have been in the early childhood field for 5 to 10 years. Awesome. Thank you so much, okay? Thanks for participating in today's poll. Interesting. This is a way of knowing that, just a reminder that whether we are veteran teachers or new teachers in the field, everything that we bring to the table is important, and anything that you share, all the information that you contribute is always valuable and certainly welcome, right, in these types of meetings and trainings. Okay, so as I said earlier in the beginning of the session, today's webinar is the last one of a series of 3 webinars for infant toddlers. And you had the participants that took part in session 2, webinar 2 of the 3 sessions, were given a reflection question at the end, and this was it. Just a reflection question. And it read, think about one strategy you learned about today that you could implement in your toddler classroom and what that would look like. Okay, so just something to think about, something to ponder. Again, in the last session, you were given a series of strategies and ideas as you will receive today. So just a way to reflect on how you will implement those ideas. And pretty much the same will be asked of you at the end of this session, because you will get some new tips and ideas that you can take back with you when you go back to the classroom. Okay, so today's learning objectives are that we're going to learn about the benefits of early language exposure and its effect on the brain. We're going to understand communication milestones of infants and toddlers, review strategies to support early language skills of infants and toddlers, and at the end, we're going to review how rich language support with infants and toddlers impacts future school success. And this is a quote that we like very much, that we think that applies very well to any walk of life. And it reads, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world," by Ludwig Wittgenstein. And so this applies to today's session very much so, not just because it talks about language, but it talks about limits, right? When we limit ourselves in any aspect of life, then we don't give ourselves that opportunity, right, to learn and to grow. And so if we limit children in their language, then we are really limiting their growth, as we'll talk about and we learn a little bit more in today's session. Okay, so babies yearn to communicate, right? So by now, we all know, even those who are not moms, but we have heard that babies are able to recognize their mother's voice and are capable of learning language even before birth, as fetuses hear and respond to sounds. That's why moms, when they're pregnant and dads are asked to speak and sing to their babies and talk, constantly to them, read to the baby, so the babies get used to the mom's voice, and the babies actually react. They actually react and move and respond to those sounds, those familiar sounds. Okay, so let's go into some benefits of early language. Early communication with infants helps build the foundational language skills needed for later academic success. As I said, we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of today's session. When adults recognize and respond to infants' communication attempts, this helps to build the bond and attachment, letting the child know we are there to meet their needs. Babies learn how to make connections of words and experiences when adults provide words for their communication attempts. Verbal exchanges or conversations with infants help model turn-taking, which is a vital part of social interactions. When infants are exposed to many words early in life, this usually reflects their social environment, like names of adults, objects, and activities in their lives. Infants learn about language when adults talk to them using complete sentences and using words to describe things. Infants learn standard grammatical speech from conversations with their caregivers. Infants and toddlers begin to understand about their feelings as adults label their emotions with words. By describing our actions and the actions of infants and toddlers, we're helping to build their skills and vocabulary by putting words and experiences together. As adults provide infants and toddlers with words and phrases to say, we are extending their understanding and use of language. By consistently and intentionally exposing infants and toddlers to language, we help build their communication skills, we enhance their self-esteem, and encourage more positive social interactions. And isn't that what we really want? Isn't that a large part of what we do in the classroom with the children? They learn to communicate better with their peers. They learn to communicate better with us. Their self-esteem is heightened, right? When we encourage those positive social interactions through language. Okay, so we're gonna look at a video, and this one is called Language for Learning Infants and Toddlers. And it's a YouTube video. And there is the link in case you are interested in jotting it down. It's a very good video. It shows a lot of interaction with the teachers, a lot of language and vocabulary. So I'm going to set it up now. Here we go. Okay, so were you able to identify any ways that those teachers were engaging with the children and supporting their language as they interacted with them? Were you able to hear them speaking in complete sentences, for example, describing events and actions? They were modeling conversation. They were acknowledging positive interactions amongst the children. They were also responding to the children's communication attempts by repeating, right, and adding more information. Again, this is a really good video. It's in YouTube, and there is the link if you are interested in looking it up. Let's continue. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how language impacts the brain. Why talking matters. Research demonstrates that the single strongest predictor of a child's academic success is not socioeconomic status, level of parental education, income, or ethnicity, but rather the quality and quantity of words spoken to the baby in the first 3 years of life. It's very important for those children to hear, even from before they are born, to enhance their language. And how does early language support help build a baby's brain? There's a huge growth of brain size and density from infancy to adulthood. When babies are born, their brain weighs around 3/4 pound. In the first 3 months, a baby's brain is about half the size of an adult brain in volume. By 12 months, the brain is about 2 pounds, or 2/3 its adult size. By the time the child is 6, the brain is about 3 pounds, or 95% of its adult size. Think about that. 95%. It's almost as large as an adult sized brain at 6. As the brain grows in size, it also grows in connectivity. It is that connectivity or communication between brain cells that allows children to use their brains to full capacity. These connections are supported through positive experiences and loving interactions young children have with their caregivers, such as those we just saw in the video, right? Even though babies can't talk back, by talking with your baby, singing songs, telling stories, and asking questions, you're helping to stimulate critical early brain development. That's the foundation of learning. That's why we want to hear talk, 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 and sing, sing, sing with those young children. Great, so let's look at some of the language development milestones. We've separated them by months. You can find some of these in the internet. We did post a handout with some developmental milestones that you can download in the handout section. And let's just go through some of these together. So infants 0 to 3 months. At this time, they are cooing. They're making cooing sounds. They quiet or smile when you speak to them. They smile when they see you. They turn their heads towards a sound. They cry differently for different needs. Okay, they have different cries for when they're wet, when they're tired, when they are hungry. And they recognize their parents' voices, right? Remember we said that in the beginning, even in the womb. By the time they're 4 months, 4 to 6 months, they're watching your face when you speak. They're more attentive. They make gurgling sounds when playing. They babble and make a variety of sounds, p, b, m. They move their eyes in the direction of sounds and respond to changes in the tone of your voice. Okay, when you're high-pitched, or when you're talking like this, when you're reading a story or asking a question. They pay attention to music. They love music and sounds. They notice the toys that make sounds, like those activity boxes we have. And they have different sounds for excitement and displeasure. By the time they're 7 to 12 months, they are trying now to communicate by actions or gestures, pointing, for example. They try to repeat your sounds. They turn and look in the direction of sounds. They're recognizing words for common items. They start saying first words like dada, mama, uh-oh. They understand simple instructions such as come here. They respond to requests such as want more. They recognize words for familiar items such as book, cup, and juice. By 13 to 18 months, now they're answering simple questions non-verbally. They try to imitate simple words. Excuse me, they have a vocabulary of about 5 to 10 words. They attend to a book or a toy for a couple of minutes. They follow simple directions accompanied by gestures. They point to objects, pictures, or family members. And although the pronunciation may not be very clear, they say about 2 to 3 words to label a person or an object. In the toddler stages from 19 to 24 months, of course, they're more verbal. They're more engaging. By now, they're saying more words every month. They speak about 50 or more words. They enjoy being read to. They point to simple body parts. They understand simple verbs such as eat and sleep. They even ask 1 to 2 word questions such as go bye-bye, ask for common foods by name. They make animal sounds like moo. They begin to use pronouns such as mine, right? They get to that popular mine stage. They use 2-word sentences such as what's that? More milk and no more. They speak well enough to be understood at least half the time by you or other primary caregiver. And they follow simple commands like roll the ball and answer simple questions like, where's your doll? Now keep in mind that this is not a standard for every child. Every child develops differently, okay? So it's not to worry if we see some of these milestones or we don't see some of these milestones in some children. Children develop in their own time. Now we're going to look at a video called Baby and Toddler Milestones. And this video was developed as a public service video by a doctor. And this is used to just share some information mainly with parents about the communication milestones of typically developing children. Okay, at the end, she also discusses a little bit about what parents should do if they feel their child has some type of delay and they're concerned. This is the YouTube link in case you're interested in looking it up. And it's a very useful video. Okay, so I'm going to just set it up. While we're looking at the video, just keep in mind some of the milestones that we discussed in the previous slides. Great. Were you able to see and identify any of those milestones we discussed in the previous slides in the video? I hope you did. Awesome. So let's continue on. Next up, my colleague Natasha will take over the next section of the presentation.
Hi, Anna. Thank you. Hi, my name is, as Anna mentioned before, my name is Natasha Egise, and I will be continuing the end of the PowerPoint of the presentation. And system is that's a scoring system that is used to assess the classroom, to measure effective interaction in the classroom. How does it happen? The teacher learn about the class assessment scoring tool and trainings, and like this, the trainings that we conduct, and then go to the classroom and teach and model effective interaction. As an observer goes in, the observer observe what's going on in the classroom, the measure of the class system, using it to measure how effective is the interaction, how well is the teacher communicating back and forth with the infant or the toddler. Once the measure is conducted, it provides the teacher and the director with a scoring system where for improvement, where they can have plan for other trainings, or where it is that the teacher is strong in and where the teacher is lacking and that needs more work. It's not a failing or passing score. It's a score to know where the classroom is at. Next. Now, looking at this screen, it shows different age level. Toddler class has an age level from infancy to secondary, and throughout those age level, it's the main thing that covers them is really effective interaction. The main milestone, the main commonalities that exist within the age group is effective interaction. Why is it important? Why is effective interaction important? Once there is effective interaction throughout those age levels, you will see warm, sensitive, individualized teaching. It will be predictable, proactive, and engaging. It will also stimulate language reach, response, and responsiveness teaching. Next. Effective interaction. Teacher and child interaction. Research has proven that effective teacher-child interaction were found to be the key element associated with increase in early language skills and decrease in behavior problem. How does that work? Now, once the interaction are effective, language is happening, teachers are modeling language skills, and children are learning the skills they need in order to communicate better. So therefore, they will see a decrease in behavior problem. So that is why effective interaction is really a key element in learning for children. Next. Early language support is part of its dimension within the CLASS tool. And how does it look like? Early language support describe how teachers intentionally expose infants to language and encourage and expand infants' communication. Teachers facilitate infants' language when they describe classroom events, imitate or initiate words or sounds, add words to extend infants' communication, and engage in back and forth exchanges. Next. Now, on this video, you will be seeing this video how the caregiver model early language support, how the communication that goes back and forth, even though it is a toddler who does not use word per se that you would say, but language is happening, modeling language is happening within this video.
Wipe you to get you all nice and clean, Miss Kimmy. Yay! Baby, we get you all clean. Put the diaper away. You ready for your dry diaper? Yeah, you are? Good. It'll feel so nice to have a dry diaper on. Ready? Up, up, up. And down, down, down. Ready? We're gonna get one side. You're all right. And the other side. We're all done. Num, 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 num. Are you ready for lunch? We're gonna take your little dress off and get you a dry one, okay? And you say, hands up. Can you put your hands up? Good job. Ooh, 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 where's Miss Kimmy? Ready? Ooh. Let's throw it in the dirty clothes.
Can you look at my things I got you?
All right, let's go wash our hands.
Okay, throughout this video, we observed teacher talk. We observed the teacher explaining to the child every step of the way, what is it that she's going to do? She said, I'm going to change the diaper. And then she, when she was putting up the child's leg, she said up, she went down, she put the leg down and she said down. She modeled when she repeat the sound the child said. When the child said, Mom, she says, you hungry? So this is an example of really how a routine, a diaper changing routine can really be intentional, and the interaction that happened where language is modeling. Next. Teacher talk. What does it look like? The caregiver talks about her action. As we just saw earlier, I'm going to change your wet diaper and provided you with a dry one. Describe classroom event. The caregiver narrates classroom event, describe them as it happening. For example, Miss Love is getting your bottle ready for you to eat. As we saw earlier in the previous video, she described everything that she was doing as changing the diaper. Verbally label objects. Dry diaper, wet diaper. Caregiver label object to the infant as she is shown interest in the object. At that time, it was changing the diaper. And as a child is going to another example is as a child is going to a toy. So the toy is being labeled. The teacher says, doll, you want this doll. Use complete and variety of sentences. How does that look like? The teacher uses complete sentences consistently, describing what your child is doing as well as what she is doing in any given moment. Communication support. Initiate sounds or words. Caregiver provides sounds for infants to make attempts to create the same sound. Yum yum, while feeding or cooing the infant. When child says dada, the caregiver responded daddy. Again, I'm going to reference to the video before. When the child said mom, the teacher said, oh, you hungry? Prior to continue the routine. Initiate or repeat sounds. The caregiver imitates the sounds the child make and repeat the sound back to the infant. Next. Communication extension. Provide words for infants. Communication. You are yarning, that means you are sleepy, the caregiver says. You are calling to get your favorite truck. Expand and extend on infant's communication. When infant says dada, the adult might say daddy. You are calling your daddy. He will be back later by extending, by providing more words. That's the extension. Model turn taking. It is very important when modeling communication that caregiver looks at the infant and listen for his or her communication bid. Pause, respond, and make eye contact. Very important. This is a language communication skill that children will learn to know that, okay, when it is time for my turn to speak and for the back to receive the back and forth. How do you extend your conversation with infants? Provide words for infants' communication. Caregiver constantly provide words for infants. Extend, expand on infants' communication. Provide more words or phrase. Model turn taking. What's the most successful way to talk with a baby? Think, I'm doing it for the both of us. The adult is constantly talking. Even though the child is giving the eye contact, the adult is providing words for the gesture and the cues that the child or the infant is doing, and providing words to those. The adult is both the supporter and the interpreter of the adult and infant conversation. Ask yourself, what might this baby say back to me? So that's the pausing by looking at the cues and responding. Next. Language modeling. Language modeling is a domain from, sorry. Language modeling is a dimension within the toddler. What does that look like? Language modeling describes how teachers intentionally encourage, respond, and extend to children's language. Teacher models language when they have meaningful conversation with their children, repeat children's words, and extend their communication. Attempts and ask follow-up questions, label object, and describe unfamiliar words for children. Next. On this video, you will get to observe language modeling for toddler, how the teacher is reading a book and then take more and the back and forth that exists. Go ahead and watch the video and note down the different areas that will be mentioned, that will be discussed. Next. Next. Now, on the video we just watched earlier, we observed language modeling and where the teacher sat and supported the language, right? We noticed the back and forth exchanges. It is a natural conversation where the adult elicit responses from children's ideas. Caregiver encourage the conversation by following the child's lead. Contingent responding. For the time where conversation is not flowing, it may require that the adult interpret child's response. Caregiver is actively listening and providing relevant answers to build on the conversation. And open-ended questions. Open-ended question, that time requires that an add-on thought and ideas instead of the yes or no answers. We observed that in the video we watched where the teacher asked, what do you think Judge is doing? And then she continued eliciting and the back and forth, contingent responding, open-ended questions, all that was observed within the video. It is good to remember that language modeling, it takes two for the language. It takes two to talk. It takes two for the language to be happening. The teacher is playing an integral part of the talking, however, providing, listening, and responding to the child. Next. Repetition and extension. The caregiver repeats what the child is saying and build on the child's what the child is saying. Extend and elaborate. I would like to see it as an owl. Colleague had that owl on her presentation when she said, and I'm gonna piggyback on that, says an owl is like an observer. O for observer, the W is to wait, and the L is to listen. These three things are really important for caregiver to observe, wait, and listen to find ways to extend and elaborate on children language. Self and parallel talk. It describes how one's action with language. For example, the teacher intentionally describes what he or she is thinking, seeing, hearing, touching, and doing. The teacher links words to actions. I am giving each one of you a handful of animal crackers. That statement is also followed by the action as she is doing it. So that's the self and parallel talk. Teacher narrates children's actions with language. The caregiver links words to child's action and experiences. That part is really talking about you are climbing up the stairs safely by holding the rail. That's putting words into the child's action, saying exactly what the child is doing. Advanced language. Variety of words used, the caregiver uses variety of words and vocabulary. Caregiver consistently use the variety of words to communicate using familiar and unfamiliar words with definition relating to the child's experiences. When reading a book, the caregiver would use the time to provide, find out the words that the child know, and build on the new and providing other words that the child may not know, unfamiliar words, and then to build on the advanced language part. Labeling. The caregiver labels objects and or emotions or feelings as the child is expressing them. Your face look like this, by frowning and making the face exactly what the face the child is making. That tells me that you are sad. Tell me why. Again, the why question is really asking and allowing the child to elaborate and providing more words answers. Connection to familiar words and ideas. While reading a story, caregiver makes connection to familiar words and ideas by relating it to their own experiences and culture. Next. How does serve and return looks like? Serve and return is the back and forth that happens when communicating. I speak, I wait and listen, and then you speak. The infant and toddlers, the serve and return process take intentionality. Although the infants are not yet communicating using words, they are communicating through their senses: sight, smell, touch, taste, and hear. These are the vehicle in which infant explores and learn about their world. So it is important for a teacher to really learn to the cues of children and really pay attention and to intentionally look for answers when talking an expression from an infant. Adults should not only initiate language transaction with babies, they must learn to read infants' cues in order to return the attention to the infants. Adults must be mindful of babies' bid for interactions through babbling, facial expression, while remain sensitive. Why is that important? It is also important to know that sometimes the child may not want to continue on the conversation, and it is the adult that the adult has to read those cues to know, okay, I don't want to overstimulate this child, and so therefore let me move to the next thing. So it is very important to learn about the cues and to know when to move to the next one and when to continue on. Next. So let's recap. Ways to improve language. We learned that engage in conversation with children. We learned that it's to provide children time to respond. That's the wait part, listen, the owl. Repeat and extend children's language. Self and parallel talk. Use words to describe action. Use a variety of words. That's the advanced language we talked about. Provide children with language to use. And label and name objects. Now, the reflection question for this session is as follows. Choose a language development strategy you will commit to try with your student when you go back to the classroom. Take a minute to think about it and jot it down. And it is something that you commit to in your classroom, to advance language, to model language. Choose one. We've gone over the different domain and the different dimension of language. So choose which one you're going to use in your classroom when you go back. And when you do that, you will learn that early language impacts future school success. Why is it important? The Journal of the Pediatric Healthcare is one of the many documents that support the ideas that language is the basics for all other content knowledge. Based on research findings, it states that not only does the child use the vocabulary and grammar predict future proficiency with the support in written words, but it also affects performance and other subject areas. A study conducted at UNC concluded that language and other words support academic and social success. A lot of other research focuses on math, science, and literacy, and they don't even consider that language could be playing a role. But really, it emerges as a strong predictor across subject areas. Why do kids succeed in math, for example? Part of it could be having a strong math vocabulary. This study, conducted by 4 institutions, was the first to look at the comprehensive set of school readiness skills and to try to determine which of all of them is the most solid predictor of child later success. Language, the ability to fluidly learn words and to string them together into sentences, was the hand-down winner. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we owe it to give them this gift of language by doing all that we've discussed and more, and providing them with the gift that they need to succeed. The resources we use for this PowerPoint, for this presentation, is listed below, and you're welcome to use them for to have further research on your own, and you can take a picture of the screen in order for you to use those website. Go to the website and do your own research. We'll leave it for about 5 more seconds. Next. Now let's go over how you'll be able to print your handouts. On the right hand, this is the slide that was from the previous, the beginning, and now this is how you go ahead and print your handout. On the right hand side, you'll see the handout icon, and you click on it, it will open all the handout, and they'll be available for you to print or download for future use. And thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, we welcome your questions, and go ahead and send them over to your chat box. And this is our contact information. Thank you again for joining us. I am Natasha Elise and Anna Avalos Atkinson. This is how to reach us, and thank you, and join us next time for the next PowerPoint or next webinar. I hope this was a great one to you, and you learn a lot that you can take back to your classroom to improve your effective child interaction in regards to language modeling and extending language for children in your classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.